Hello, my name is Ramona Johnson, and I am President and CEO of Bridgehaven Mental Health Services. I am pleased and honored to speak with all of you, although I do miss seeing your faces. Our mental health rally in this video is another adaptation, like so many we have all made in response to this COVID-19 pandemic. It is also one of the many examples of Bridgehaven's flexibility and determination to ensure that our members have the services and supports they need to continue their recovery from mental illness despite the pandemic. Most of us know someone with a mental illness and the challenges it creates for the individual and their family. During the best of times, those who are affected may have difficulty seeking treatment and support. Add a viral pandemic and the precautions needed to protect ourselves and others, and people with a mental illness may experience even greater feelings of isolation, hopelessness, anxiety, and despair. This year has tested my resilience and challenged me to hang on to hope for myself and for my mother. Some of you may know that my mother has lived with crippling anxiety and depression for most of her life. She turned 87 this year, lost her only living sibling, and was hospitalized with 2 severe infections just as the pandemic began. For the first time in her life, she was alone in the hospital without me to reassure her. As a result, she became severely agitated and disoriented, and really has never recovered. She returned to her assisted living apartment, but with a very impaired memory and intermittent disorientation. Since March, I have seen her 3 times, and our only means of communication is the telephone. Her depression is profound. She has lost interest in everything. The lockdown required for safety and the resulting isolation, along with her severe depression, have caused a rapid deterioration. In less than 7 months, she went from being a chronically depressed and anxious, but cognitively sharp, well-groomed and attractive woman to a shadow of her former self. She is tortured by the belief that she is no longer in her apartment, but sharing a room with countless strangers, none of whom will help her. She has lost 25 pounds. My heart breaks. Mental illness can be a terminal disease, and my mother is caught in a perfect storm that I fear will lead to her death. Mental illness can kill. Isolation can kill. But your support has saved lives. Our staff have helped Bridgehaven members deal with their anxiety, depression, fear, and isolation. We have continued to offer our life-saving recovery services throughout this stressful time. It has not been easy. Using the telephone and telehealth, we reached out to all of our members during the first weeks of the pandemic and remained in touch with them at the frequency they requested. They received essential peer support, therapy, and medication management. Often we provided community outreach and even food to those in extreme need. Many have told us that contact with Bridgehaven staff was their lifeline, saving them from the despair and hopelessness threatening to envelop them. Some were fortunate to keep jobs, giving them purpose and social contact, but increasing their fears of exposure to the virus. The results of our outcome measures show that our efforts are effective and demonstrate the amazing resilience of those we serve. Member satisfaction with services was 96%. Despite the pandemic, 76% reported satisfaction with their quality of life, and incredibly, members achieved 99% of their recovery goals. Incarcerations were reduced by 100%, and hospital days by 83%, saving taxpayers almost $200,000. Among the homeless people Bridgehaven serves, 70% were able to find and maintain housing. You, our faithful supporters, helped our members to survive and succeed during this challenging and deadly pandemic. Following the Healthy at Work guidelines, we are providing services on site at both our original location and our newly completed expansion on 2nd Street. We could not offer our nationally recognized non-residential psychiatric rehabilitation, recovery, and community integration programs without you. We could not have completed our expansion that we began before the pandemic and now allows us to provide socially distanced services to more people in need without your support. Not only did we continue our services uninterrupted, we expanded during this crisis. You have helped Bridgehaven's members sustain hope and experience the miracle of recovery during these unprecedented times. We are eternally grateful. The need for mental health services is growing rapidly, and our mission and our work have never been more important. However, because of the pandemic, we have sustained a significant loss in revenue. Now more than ever, your gift is essential to help our members with severe mental illness reclaim their lives and be successful at home, at work, and in the community. The pandemic makes it even harder for those with mental illness to overcome the many obstacles they face as they work to reclaim their lives and their hope. Mental illness affects 1 in 4 Americans. The support you provide through Bridgehaven can benefit someone you know, a friend, a neighbor, a loved one. Although we cannot host our annual breakfast that so many of you have attended, this virus will not stop us from celebrating our members and their talents and triumphs. And it will not stop us from celebrating you, our supporters. Thank you for your compassion and your generosity. You are saving lives.
Hello, my name is Aaron. I gave a speech a few years ago explaining my diagnoses: depression from early on, narcolepsy since middle school, brain injury since college. I talked about CET, cognitive enhancement therapy, and how much it helped. I talked about how Bridgehaven was a leader in advocacy and protected me from stigma. They asked me to speak again this year and let you know how I'm doing. Maybe they think all of you could use some good news. I think in 2020, all of us could use as much good news as we can get. Last time I said that progress felt slow going. It still does. But even I must admit that I'm starting to thrive. For the first time since my brain injury, I've had stable housing for 2 years now. That really was a life changer. I'm so happy not to couch hop month to month anymore. Bridgehaven helped connect me to the acquired brain injury long-term care waiver. This has allowed me to receive consistent speech therapy, occupational therapy, community living support, and case management. Another good thing is my resilience. COVID and the quarantine hit me pretty hard. It caused a full relapse in my mental health. My house went from sparkling clean to me not doing dishes for 6 months. Worse yet, I started losing sleep, missing doctor's appointments, losing track of time. It's when I started running out of medication and couldn't follow through with the steps to get it refilled that I knew things were becoming dangerous. But, thanks to Bridgehaven, I had the skills, training, and resilience to persevere and eventually bounce back. In cognitive enhancement therapy, I learned how to communicate concisely about critical information to key individuals, the perspective taking needed to avoid costly misunderstandings, the mental flexibility to handle overwhelming amounts of information. In DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, I learned the distress tolerance and emotional regulation that I needed to cope with what was happening. In ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, I learned that after you've tried everything, it's okay to let it go. It's okay to feel pain and stress sometimes. You don't need to fear, overreact, or avoid it so strongly. Finally, I would like to tell you about Tamara. We've been dating for 7 years, friends for 10. We met through our love of art and gaming. She's from Amsterdam. I went there for a month Christmas before last. She came here Derby before that. My favorite activity during our visit is just quality time. Making dinner, watching Netflix. But we also like to bike and visit friends and family and museums and parks, whatever. Even the arguments were wholesome in a weird way. One of the most vivid memories I had was sitting outside the Dutch grocery with locals during my first experience eating traditional Netherlands Hollandaise Nuharing. It's a raw fish that costs up to $15,000 a barrel, US. But all of that came with a big price. The logistics of traveling were particularly distressing for me. Airports were not made for people with brain injuries. The lights, sounds, and overflow of information left me almost paralyzed with confusion. I know travel would not have been possible had it not been for Bridgehaven and therapies like CBT, CET, and the ACT. Lastly, I want to talk about some sentimental memories that I've made at Bridgehaven. Because when I look back from where I am now, that kind of stuff mattered a lot more than I actually realized at the time. Sharing meals, pet therapy, knitting, gaming, editing the newspaper, journaling, the art shows. I still think my Batman mirror was one of my all-time most successful art pieces. I remember one time in particular when I had a plumbing pipe burst during a cold snap, and after weeks without water for dishes, laundry, and toilet, it was such a relief to be able to take a shower and use the washing machine at Bridgehaven. I could go on and on. So, if you want help with your recovery, then come to Bridgehaven. Get better, make memories, and eat raw fish in Europe. Oh, and tomorrow's visiting again this month.